So as I record this, Advent has begun. And Advent comes from the Latin word adventus, which means coming, or an opportunity to wait. And it often has to do, for Christians certainly, with preparing ourselves to celebrate the arrival of Jesus, the Prince of Peace. And traditionally it's a season in which Christians take time to reflect, to think, to pray, to discern what the coming of Jesus might mean for them and for their lives. Now, this Advent, this Christmas, is an extraordinary Advent for me, because during this time of discernment and reflection and prayer, I've been thinking a lot about where Jesus was born. Now, as we know, Jesus was born in the ancient Judean city of Bethlehem, which today is in the West Bank in Palestine. And isn't it strange that if Jesus were to be born in Palestine today, he would be born in an occupied territory? And I wonder what it might mean for us this Advent to reflect on Jesus, the Prince of Peace, being born into a war zone, a world of war. I wonder what Jesus himself would think about his birthplace and about the people who live there today, the children, the women, the men, who not only live there, but also who die there. I wonder what Jesus might long for Bethlehem and for the many other cities and towns and places in Palestine, in the West Bank. Now, of course, there are other elements to the nativity story that are important for us to reflect upon during this time of Advent, the birth of Jesus that we should reflect upon. Firstly, we could recognize that Jesus was born in a precarious place, but also into a precarious social situation. Jesus wasn't born in the security of a home with its comfort and sterility. We know that Jesus was born in a stable because the rich and the powerful had taken up all the places where he would live. We also know that Jesus was born to a teenage girl who was pregnant by someone other than the man to whom she was married. And yet, even in the midst of this, even in the midst of Mary's precarity, in the midst of the place where Jesus is born, God chooses to do something absolutely remarkable. They're shown hospitality. They're offered a place of safety and care, the best that could be offered given the situation. And we know that Jesus' birth itself was something so remarkable that it had the most powerful person of the time, Herod, the most powerful political authority, the greatest power in the region, trembling. You see, they could not stop the birth of the Prince of Peace. And I think there's a lesson for us to be learnt in this. Sometimes peace comes through the most extraordinary people, in the most unexpected places, and in the most unexpected ways. Now, this is the third thing that I want to mention today, and that's the importance of that promise, the promise of the Prince of Peace. You see, real peace could begin today. Real peace might even come into the world through unexpected and ordinary people in unremarkable places, like the person that I am and the place where I am, perhaps even the same for you. Now, as you can hear by my accent, I come from a strange place. I come from a context where religiously informed violence was placed upon people, where a group of people came into a strange land, themselves having suffered persecution, religious persecution, and they came into a strange land and somehow they believed that they were exceptional, that God had given them a right to displace the people and claim the land for themselves. Of course, I come from South Africa, and I'm speaking about colonialism and the conquest of the southern tip of Africa and its perfection in the evils of apartheid. I come from apartheid South Africa, where a group of people thought that they were so special in the world, special to God, racially and ethnically so unique, religiously supported in their views, that they thought that their religion, their beliefs, their identity gave them the right to abuse others. This is what Mitri Raheb the Palestinian theologian says is the software that allows the hardware of abuse to function, the weapons, the walls, the laws. But we do know that there's another side to history, and we've seen that in places like South Africa. We know that these powers that think that they are more powerful than anything else cannot prevail against the reality of justice. I'm often reminded of that phrase by Martin Luther King Jr., who says, the arc of history is long, but it always bends towards justice. And this reminds me of the importance of unexpected people in unexceptional places doing exceptionally acts of love. In the late 1980s, a protest march was arranged in apartheid South Africa, in Cape Town, the city where I am from. And because it was a threat to the governing authorities and they heard about it, they banned the march and threatened to arrest all of the people who would attend this peaceful protest against injustice. Now, just a note on that word protest. I don't know if you know where it comes from, the etymology of the word. Protest literally comes from two Latin words, pro and testari. The Latin word testari means to offer a witness, a testimony, a testament. And the word pro means that it is a testament towards truth. Protest very often is exactly that. It's a witness towards a greater truth. So Desmond Tutu, knowing that the march couldn't go ahead, invited the people who were there to come for a prayer meeting in St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town, the Anglican Cathedral of Cape Town. And this act of prayer, this peaceful moment of praying for injustice to end and justice to come, was so threatening to the apartheid authorities that they sent the security police and the military to come and occupy the building. And they were standing all around the edges of the cathedral on that day as people prayed and sought God's intervention in the violence. And at a certain point in the prayer meeting, Desmond Tutu addressed the soldiers and the security police women and men who were there, and he said this to them. He said, "So since you have already lost, I invite you today, come and join the winning side." Today the ceasefire in Palestine will be ended, and thousands more are likely to lose their lives, children, women and men, in both Palestine and Israel this Christmas. That makes this a Christmas that is not ordinary. But Advent teaches us that we can do something. We can wait actively for that day when war will cease, when hatred will end, when people will find peace with one another and justice will prevail. In fact, not only can we wait, we can also pray and we can protest. We can witness towards a world in which there is peace. So I want to invite you to do three things this Advent. First of all, I want to invite you to take time daily to reflect on the birthplace of Jesus, on Bethlehem, in the West Bank. And I want you to think a little bit about what Jesus himself might want for that place and those people at this time, and ask him to speak to you, discern what his will is and what you should think, what you can say and what you can do. Secondly, like Mary, the unexpected mother of the Prince of Peace who gives birth in an unexpected place, God might just want to use unexpected me and unexpected you to do something remarkable. So the second thing I want to invite you to do is to start a conversation, a gentle conversation with family and friends. Invite them to think about the place of the birth of Jesus this Advent, and invite them to think about what it is that God may be wanting for that place today, for those people today. And let the conversation be a conversation of hope and peace. And finally, I want to invite you to protest in prayer. I want you to do what Desmond Tutu did. I want you to hope in the promise of the coming of the Prince of Peace. And I want you to pray for peace. Pray for peace in Palestine. Pray for peace in Jerusalem. Pray for people who would choose violence to try and end violence. And pray that God would raise up women and men of character and integrity, of courage, who will seek ways of peace to bring about peace. Now here's one last thought for you. There is in truth no such thing as an ordinary Christmas. The coming of Christ into the world, into Bethlehem, a displaced, marginal figure facing the might of a violent military ruler in an inhospitable place, could not stop love from winning. That is the promise of Advent. It's the promise of the Nativity, the promise of Christmas. And that is the extraordinary promise of Christ. It's the promise of this Christmas. Love wins. And if you and I have the courage to live in love, love will always win.